Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to The Corner Kick. I'm Alex Fidrushevsky. I'll be with you for the next hour or so to take you around the world of soccer, well, at least the American world of soccer, because we always like to focus on the game here at home. We've been very, very busy with our sports coverage here over the last few weeks, specifically with high school football. We've been following Mount Lebanon through the Pennsylvania State playoffs. They'll be in the state championship game this weekend in Hershey against St. Joe's Prep. We'll be there for that one on Saturday. And, of course, we'll talk about that on Wednesday with the Three Rivers Broadcasting Sports Report, Coach Kurzowski and myself, and potentially Joey the Truth. He was celebrating the Steelers win, so we'll try to get Joey in here as well. But that's what's going to be coming up this week. We're going to be out in Hershey for the state championship weekend. But as it pertains to the beautiful game, well, why don't we get right into it? And there was a bit of breaking news this afternoon right here in Pittsburgh, and I figured I would lead off with MLS and the MLS Cup final coming up, and I thought I'd break down the Philadelphia Union New York City game. Got to watch that. I rewatched the Portland game because I had missed it on Saturday because of being out at the Lebo game for football, but I'm going to shelve that right now because it broke this afternoon. We got the media email and then the press release soon following afterwards that the Pittsburgh Riverhounds have announced their initial roster moves looking into 2022. And I think that most notably and most importantly, it is worth starting at the return of leading scorer Russell Cicerone. Now, Cicerone had a career year for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds this year. He had only scored a handful of goals coming into this season and then exploded. Had a career year, an absolutely fantastic year, 16 goals for the 27-year-old striker. He played very, very well. Got in front of goal, was able to, get good movement off the ball. And when they were able to hold up play for him a little bit to make some of those overlapping runs, it really went well for him. So that's where it starts. First and foremost is that Russell Cicerone has rejoined the team. They've exercised the option on his contract, so he will be back. Now, this was a guy who, again, I figured might have had a look from a higher level, be it MLS or maybe, one of the kind of second divisions somewhere in some far-flung place in Europe. But again, clearly Bob Lilly and Tuffy Schallenberger and that crew over there have valued him enough to bring him back. Don't know if he's getting a raise or not. If not, he should. But had a very, very good year, and I'd expect more from Cicerone in 2022, as he will be the rock for the Riverhounds up top. Alex Dixon also returning, who was the second leading scorer, had 9 goals. The 31-year-old winger will return, brings a lot of experience. He played in MLS and bounced around the USL a little bit, but has really, found himself over the last, I'd say, 2 or 3 years as a very, very good player. Oklahoma City, he had a very good year a couple of years ago. I think it was 18. He had a dozen goals then. Had 2 decent seasons in Hartford, and then played very well last year for the Riverhounds. So that's 2 very, very important pieces to the puzzle going forward that they will be bringing back for certain. Also worth noting, and it's no surprise here, Kenardo Forbes is back. He was a All-USL selection. He is now the team's current longest tenured player. That'll be his 5th year coming back with the Riverhounds. So no surprise there. He seems pretty settled in here in Pittsburgh and clearly very happy, and they're happy to have him back. So that's 3 really good building blocks, including Cicerone and Dixon up top. That really leaves them only needing one other option to complete their kind of, if you want to say, starting third of the field. To bring 2/3 back in a year where I figured they would lose 2/3. I honestly, my honest take, both whether it's media, fan, whatever, I thought Cicerone was gone. I figured somebody somewhere, whether it was another USL team that would have said, well, whatever they're paying you, we'll give you 50% more on top of that, come on out here. Or maybe an MLS team looking for some depth on the bench, or again, maybe some far-flung team in, second division of Finland, or someone is like, we need a striker. How, can we match what the Riverhounds paid you? Would you like to give this a go over here? But I figured he would have moved on, be it within the USL or elsewhere. His return is really big. You can't quantify that. for the Riverhounds. The fact that they were then also, they've also got Dixon exercising that his option that to bring 2/3 of the attack back. Tommy Williamson was on loan from San Jose and MLS. I assume that he'll be going back there, and I wouldn't foresee him returning to the Pittsburgh Riverhounds next year. Though again, crazier things have happened. I assume that he's going to get his shot with San Jose next year. But to bring 2 of the 3 back, that really I think eases a little bit of the pressure on Bob Lilly. Now it's going to be more about finding the depth that can support them up top, which that's always challenging in the USL. So the fact that, again, goal scorers usually move on. So they were able to bring him back by picking up his option. That's good for them. And Kenardo Forbes, again, he's the rock in midfield. He's been fantastic. And no surprise that he's going to hang around. He is a veteran leader for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. Had a run out with the Jamaican national team, and sometimes having, I know soccer, everybody in soccer is trying to go younger, 20, 18 MLS teams are buying 18, 19-year-olds from Brazil and this. Sometimes there's something to be said for having a guy like Kenardo Forbes, who's 33 and has played, 200 games, 250 games, whatever it is, under his professional belt, even if it's at the USL level. And his experience with Jamaica was 10, almost 12 years ago. Sometimes you can't put a value on that. It was like when Ben Zemansky played here for 1 year. A guy who had played 10 years or 12 years in Major League Soccer, who comes in for, again, just one season in 2018 with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, played 25 games that year for the Riverhounds. And again, this is a guy who had played for Chivas and MLS when they were in MLS, and then the Portland Timbers, and had played in CONCACAF Champions League games. And, so he had gone down and played in some of those weird venues down in Honduras where the field is all rocky. And, he had gone through some of those situations. And, a guy like that to step in and play really well is always beneficial. So to keep Forbes, it's in that kind of same vein, and he's been here, obviously, so he's very comfortable with Pittsburgh, but to pick up his option is good, and depending on the budget next year, maybe you find another guy who can fill in that hole. Also worth noting of importance, they have exercised the options on 3 of the center backs, which I expected that Wheat and then the TNT internationals, Mikhail Williams and Jelani Peters, would return for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. And we were talking about this at the end of the season, that if they wanted to set themselves up to compete next year, it was Williams, it was Peters, it was Wheat, Cicerone, Dixon. That these are the 7 or 8 guys. Forbes, can they get him back for another year? It was these 7 or 8 guys. I was like, okay, if they can get these guys back, and then maybe negotiate to try to get Vidiello, back in goal, you could start to bring in some of these other pieces of the puzzle in the offseason that were on 1-year contracts and bring them back for next year. There could be, they could be pretty good. And they are also bringing back Todd Wharton, Ezra Armstrong, and Danny Rovira, who will be back for his 4th season with the Riverhounds. So, I think that's a pretty good list to start with for Bob Lilly. I mean, coming in now, he's got 9 players. That's a good building block where you're going into January and February and March, where you're going to try to see who's out there. And obviously the Riverhounds aren't going to buy someone in the transfer window, but you're going to see who's out there that is a kind of USL level, or maybe somebody dropping out of MLS, free agent in January and while you're in your preseason, January and February. You're going to see what happens with the college draft and the MLS camps. Now, the MLS college draft has really kind of seen its day, where very, very few players who go that route and go through the draft latch on, stick around for more than maybe a year or two. The college level guys these days are the vast majority. Not all of them. There's always 1 or 2 that pop through, but the vast majority of them are USL guys. So you're going to see what happens in that realm, and then MLS training camps, you're going to see which veterans or guys who've been there a year or two don't get contracts, and then the dogfight starts in the USL, where it's 30 plus teams, including the USL 2 now, where you have Madison and Greenville Triumph and these other Omaha. Then they just try to fight for. They're going to start to fight for who's out there. They said in the press release as well that the Riverhounds are negotiating with other players who contracts ended. So as I had said, then you're going to try to talk to some of those guys who were out there at the end of last year that were 1-year players. That's again, is that I don't know their contract statuses, so I'm assuming because some of these names weren't on the list. Is that where Danny Vitiello falls in? Does that where Velarde falls in? Is that where Perez falls in? Is Dikwa going to be healthy enough to come back? There's 5 or 6 other players that could they come back with 10 guys plus. Is Jordan Dover on that list? Jordan Dover was injured. He started working his way back. Is Jordan Dover going to be one of those guys? Have to believe that because he's a Bob Lilly guy. 4 years in Pittsburgh and 1 in Rochester. That our Guyana international Jordan Dover, one of our fine international players here from the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, will be back. You have to assume that he's going to be back. Jordan Dover will make a return. So I think that they'll, the vast majority of the talent will probably be back for next year. They were 17-8-7. They were good. 4th straight playoff appearance. I think they're hoping for a little more than they got. But if you could kind of keep everybody together for year 2, I think that's fine. And Dixon also, in addition to his 9 goals, 9 assists last year. Forbes, it was a good year for him too. 5 goals and 6 assists. That was a personal best for him. And they accounted for 70% of the team scoring last year. The 9 players that they brought back. So that's a hefty percentage for the USL. And as I said, usually better players always move on, and this was a conversation we always had, even even down in the NPSL with the Sonic and the Bucksmont Torch, where yes, you're dealing with amateur and semi-professional teams. A lot of college kids is different, but we always say you don't just find a striker. And when you get one, you usually don't keep them. So to be able to keep Cicerone, just to kind of put a bow on all of this, it's really, really important. I can't stress it, how important it is to bring him back. So they've got a really, really good core back. I think bringing back the 2 TNT center backs in Williams and Peters were must-haves. They bring kind of that next level of experience. They're in the national team pool. Williams is 31. Been around the block a little bit, played 2 seasons in Europe, albeit sparingly when he was younger. But he played for Pogoń Szczecin in Poland when he was probably 21, 22. He played, I think it was like 10 games that year for them. Played in Denmark for a year as well, and then bounced around, found a couple of good seasons in Major League Soccer with Colorado, and then by kind of falling through the cracks here and there. He was in the USL for 2 years. He was in, I think it was Guatemala or Honduras at Municipal. I think it was Guatemala, Municipal, and just fell in Bob Lilly's lap when they were able to get him, and that was a great signing. Jelani Peters at 27 played his way into the TNT national team this year. He had played previously in Trinidad. He was with TFC Toronto with their USL team. Didn't really get any time over 3 years, and found himself in Pittsburgh. And Bob Lilly's always had this ability, it seems, to take retreads. I guess you could call them retreads, or never was, or guys who've fallen off the radar, and get the most out of them And, and I think having been to training a bunch of times this summer, you could see it, the way he runs. It's a high energy thing. And, he's not afraid to tell them when they mess up, but they seem to respond to him. And I think that it was it was a must have to get these guys back. They did a very, very good job of exercising options and making sure they held on to these players and having the foresight to say, hey, we're going to write in a contract for kind of some of the guys who they thought could be key players, with Dixon and Peters and Williams and Cicerone, and say, we're going to put the club option in here where we can sit down at the table and let's get you back in the fold for next year. So the Riverhounds, surprisingly, again, I wasn't planning on talking about the Pittsburgh Riverhounds today, but they dropped this bomb, and that was a great piece of news to see that the Riverhounds, the roster is starting to take shape for next year. You got to be happy with the players that they brought back, and I was batting this around a couple of days ago with the coach, and we were saying, who's going to come back, who's not going to come back, and we everybody that we talked about, they needed to bring back, they brought back. Danny Rivera's back, who had a very, very good season for them. They brought back the core, and now we don't know who they're negotiating with, obviously, and I'm not going to ask for that information because you know what they would tell me? Get out of here. But I would assume, I'm going to just go ahead and assume that Danny Vitiello is one of those guys, like I had mentioned. There's 5 or 6 other guys that they were mentioning. I'll go out on a limb and say Josh Gatt's probably not going to be back next year. It was a low-risk signing on both sides. If it panned out, Bob Lilly wins. If it didn't pan out, nobody expected, a ton after the just injury after injury after injury Gatt has suffered over the years. And I credit Gatt. He's gone through quite a bit, both as a player and as a person over the years. And he tried to come back after that catastrophic knee injury back in, I think it was 13. He missed all of 14, came back in 15, and got hurt right away again. And he's had a couple of bad injuries since then. He did play in MLS for Colorado. He had one healthy year and then jumped back over to Europe. He played in Austria for a year and then bounced back to Dundalk and then the Riverhounds. And again, I think injuries have taken their toll on Gatt, who I think everybody had high hopes for him when he was playing for Molde in the 2010, 2011, 2012. I think there was some real hope there that he could be a mainstay for the national team, and he got 2 appearances before he got hurt, and I think there was kind of a plan that as long as this guy keeps progressing, he was going to be a very, very good national team player. Unfortunately, injuries just derailed his career, and I would imagine that he's probably going to be one of the guys who you won't see back with Pittsburgh next year. Though I could be wrong. You never know what's going on in Bob Lilly's mind down there on the south side, and we'll see as it progresses. But again, I give them credit. They wrote the contracts right, and they were able to bring back the core that they needed to bring back, and now we just wait and see who's going to come in next. We're going to take a quick pause for the cause, and then when we get back from our commercial break here, I'm going to talk about the MLS Cup final. We'll talk about the Union NYCFC game yesterday, and then the upcoming New York City Portland Timbers game at the weekend.
Experts say that the most important time in a young child's life is elementary school, and the lessons they learn from kindergarten through 8th grade form the foundation for the rest of their lives. That's where Mother of Mercy Academy excels. For over 70 years, Mother of Mercy has provided a faith-based Catholic education to children in the South Hills. They offer an advanced curriculum, active arts, and full sports program with a Christ-centered experience. Mother of Mercy focuses on molding young minds intellectually, physically, and spiritually. Their goal is for children to become well-rounded individuals who are prepared for the next steps in life. Mother of Mercy Academy is located at the St. Gabriel campus, 5200 Greenridge Drive in the Baldwin section of Pittsburgh. They currently have an open enrollment period and can be reached at 412-882-3353 That's 412-882-3353. Mother of Mercy Academy. For faith, for family, for life.
Are you looking for a job that can turn into a career? If so, why don't you hit the road with Waste Management? Waste Management is hiring experienced and entry-level CDL truck drivers and technicians. If you're at least 18 years of age, come join our growing team and get up to a $7,000 sign-on bonus based on experience. WM offers competitive pay and industry-leading benefits, including tuition reimbursement for yourself and dependents. Start your tomorrow today. Visit WM online at careers.wm.com. The Polish Falcons of America's new term life insurance plan is the perfect choice for young individuals and families looking to plan for tomorrow today. PFA Term Life can provide a substantial lump sum benefit in the event of a tragic loss, helping loved ones pay off a mortgage, credit cards, student loans, and cover funeral expenses. Learn more by calling 1-800-535-2071. That's 1-800-535-2071 or visiting polishfalcons.org. Carnegie Ironworks is Pittsburgh's go-to for artistic, unique, and decorative steel and iron designs. We provide custom fencing, interior and exterior railings, outdoor fire pits, window coverings, and much more. If you can think of it, we can fabricate it. Find us on the web at www.carnegieiron.com. That's Carnegie Ironworks, for when you need it for 500 years. Are you an athlete looking to take your game and performance to the next level? Gym Rat Performance Training is where Pittsburgh's elite competitors go to train. We specialize in personal training, strength, speed, and agility training, sports-specific training, and we offer the best basketball player development in the City of Champions. If you are ready to transform your body, expand your mind, and reach your potential, it's time to join the Rat Pack at gymratpt.com. That's GYMRATPT.com. Gym Rat Performance Training, punishing Pittsburgh since 2016 because rats don't rest.
All right, welcome back here, ladies and gentlemen, to the Corner Kick. I'm Alex Fidrushevsky with you here every Monday at 8 p.m. on Three Rivers Broadcasting. Make sure you catch our Three Rivers Broadcasting Sports Report each and every Wednesday at 8 p.m. with Coach Kurzhovsky and myself. He's going to be getting into basketball season with McGuffey's girls very, very soon. We're looking forward to going down and covering them, as well as the Pittsburgh City League. We're going to be providing wall-to-wall coverage of Pittsburgh City League high school basketball. We're going to be doing boys games and some girls games as well. So we're looking forward to getting on down to cover the Pittsburgh City League here at Three Rivers Broadcasting as well. So that's just some of what we've got going on. Make sure you catch the D and the Bad Boy, two of Andy's favorites. The Mikey D. Tom Baritza USA radio show comes your way Saturdays at noon and Sundays at 6. And then we got the bad boy, Eddie Biegai, with the Polka Power Hour. Saturdays at 2 and Sundays at 7. So on Sundays, you can get back-to-back two of the legends, the D and the bad boy. So make sure you check it out. All our great programming is available. Check it out online, threeriversbroadcasting.com. And it's great to be with you here again on the Corner Kick. And we're going to get into now the MLS Cup Final, which is coming up on the weekend. We got the Portland Timbers against New York on the 11th. That's Saturday at 3 p.m. So this is actually pretty convenient because I can watch the MLS Cup Final before the Mount Lebanon game against St. Joe's Prep that we're going to be covering. So we could do it all. So Portland was 5th in the Supporters Shield standings, just ahead of New York City, 55 points, New York City on 51. Timbers beat Salt Lake 2-0, goals by Felipe Mora, Santiago Moreno, and then New York City, we're going to dive into that. The number 4 seed in the Eastern Conference defeated the Union 2-1 yesterday afternoon. So the Citizens will travel across the country to Oregon and Providence Park for MLS Cup. Now, if you could write the script out of the teams that were left, Providence Park is probably going to be the coolest atmosphere that you could ask for. Yankee Stadium was kind of out of the run-in for a good portion of the year because of what they were doing in New York. And again, we don't get into that here. They had to play at Red Bull for a while. But again, out of what's left, Portland, it's going to be a wild atmosphere. It's going to be a great time. And from the optics of what they're going to be looking for, I mean, it's going to be standing room only. I forget what Providence Park holds these days. I don't know if it's close to 30 or... let's just, let's find that out right now. Providence Park, 22,000. So 22,000 even after the La Bombonera edition that they put on there, but it's one of the, listen, I think it's one of the coolest stadiums in the country. They took an old multi-purpose football, baseball stadium and turned it into probably one of the nicest soccer stadiums in the country. So, bravo to the Timbers and to Merritt Paulson and everyone that's worked with them over the years to turn Providence Park, it was Geldwen, PGE, Multnomah Field, the original from, 1893. Let's go all the way back. But Providence Park. So it's going to be I think we'll see what happens on Sunday. But let's get how we got there. I didn't really get to watch a ton of the Timbers on the weekend because we had to go cover Mount Lebanon. So I got to rewatch it, but I was a little tired when I did it. So just based off the highlights, they did the job and got there. That's really all I could say, because again, I didn't watch the match live. I tried to just rewatch it later on, and it's watching it at like 1 a.m. doesn't really work. Niezgoda got back in, for the picture now, after being, kind of injured and things like that. So he's coming back in. The man of the match, I don't know, Moreno. I would imagine. Again, I was kind of one eye in that one. So still, they got 2 goals. They got one early from Felipe Mora, kind of lit the stadium up, and off it runs. Now, on the eastern side, I did get to watch the New York City-Philadelphia match yesterday, and that was a really cagey, good. It was a really cagey, good match, considering the fact that the Union were down. What was it, like 9 or 10 regulars from the protocols, from the testing protocols that they're still doing in these sports. And Andy and I talked about that a little bit, last week. But the Union, they missed 9 guys, and they rolled out a fairly shorthanded but still very competitive roster. I think the substitutions that Ronnie Dyla made were at the right time. I think the Union they shifted the formation. They usually play it's a 4-4-2 with the diamond, and they went more towards for the lay person, you'd call it a Christmas tree. It was a 4-3-2-1. So they just kind of went like back forward, and the idea of playing a 4-3-2-1 again is if you're going to absorb pressure and you don't have 9 regulars because of testing protocols, your 4-4-2 diamond that you play with your regulars becomes something else. It has to, otherwise you're going to be in trouble. So, the purpose of doing that and playing this kind of inverted Christmas tree is to cut the space down and cut the time that a central midfielder has when they get the ball, especially for a team like New York City who plays through Maxi Moralez in the center of the pitch. It's to give him as little time and as little space as possible and then force them out wide, especially if they're not as good out wide, which New York City is just okay out on the wing. They're not going to kill you with crosses from outside. So it was a smart move by Jim Curtin to go into that formation because, again, and for large portions of the game, it did exactly what they needed it to do. New York really couldn't get into a rhythm. They got pinned in their own end for a good portion of the game. And it limited what players like Morales could do, floating in and out. They just, if you don't give them the space and you don't give that type of player the time, they're not going to be able to spray those balls all over the place. And with Castellanos suspended, I think he's been far more effective down the stretch than Hebert, but Hebert is also he's a capable player, the Brazilian striker. So when they put him in instead of Castellanos, it's not equally like for like, but it's as close to that as they could have possibly had because he's a good player. He came here with European experience, so it's not like he was some random guy that they found. He had played well at all of his stops throughout his career, really. He played well in Brazil, played better in Europe. He was in Armenia for a year. I think he had 20 goals there. He played in Croatia for a few years, played very well for Rijeka when they were really a contender in Croatia, and that's a very, very good European league. It's top heavy, but their top five can really bang with anybody. So when you go to a guy like that, it's kind of, again, it's not like for like exactly, but it's similar. You get a little more movement out of Castellanos. Hebert's a little more of a kind of a hold up guy and trail the play, but Jim Curtin's guys were able to do that, and New York City with Amundsen and Tavon Gray just weren't really able to threaten down the wing. And I think we learned, too, how important Castellanos was because of how he could link the play together. So, I want to give credit, I think, where it's due to Philadelphia. Also to Aurelian Collin, who had played 1 minute this year, the 35-year-old veteran defender who has been in MLS for the better part of the last decade and then had a decent start to his career in Europe as well before he came over. He went the distance in what probably was his final game. It was probably his final game. I would bet that he's going to retire. I don't think there's a USL stopping Aurelian Collins' future, especially because he's got a fashion business. I think he's going to move on here. But you couldn't have asked for a better player in that moment if you're the Union, where you're down 9 starters because of virus protocols, and you need somebody to step in at center back who's got experience. It's why you paid Aurelian Collin $80,000 to play 1 minute this year, because in the one game where they really needed him, he stepped up for pretty much the entire match. We'll get to the goals in a moment, but he did what Jim Curtin needed him to do in that one. The Philadelphia goal in the 63rd was nice. I think Gazdag's in-swinger on the his in-swinger was really good, intended for Przybyłko, and I think if Callen doesn't get that and put it, doesn't deflect that into his own net, Przybyłko's probably putting it in anyway, because of where he was positioned. So that's you're one to the good right there. But I think the response from New York City, specifically now, once you got to the substitutions, Ronnie Dyla has a bit of a reputation to stick it out with the guys that are the starters, and he'll wait and wait and wait, and sometimes it's almost he waits too long to make those moves. I think you'd see that in sometimes in inexperienced managers. Mike Petke used to do that when he was the manager of Red Bull. He would wait and wait and wait and wait. It's almost like then he would wait too long to make the impact sub. He threw a handful of guys out there at once and essentially said, like, I'm rolling the dice. I'm going to roll the dice. We're going to see what happens. And at this point of the season, we're kind of playing with house money, guys. So, they're missing all these regulars. We've still got a bunch of guys, and the insertion of Tajuri Shradi, Thorarison, and Thales Magno, the young Brazilian striker, it changed the game. Now New York City did strike back. Right after the own goal, Maxi Morales scored 2 minutes later, and again, he's 34, but still, he is the key to that whole offense, and it kind of killed the mood in the stadium. Chanot, who had a very good game for New York City, hit a knuckleball, and instead of catching it, Freeze had to parry away. And there was a scramble, ball falls to Maxi Morales' feet. I mean, the goal's wide open. But those are kind of the breaks that you need sometimes. I also think that on the first goal, there was a miss that I got to check out with the Union, and that was Mabizo, the right back, who was responsible for both goals. If I had to put the kind of a man of the match and then the antithesis of man of the match, Mabizo would be the antithesis for the Union, and Colin would probably be the man of the match. But he was out of position. He just lost Maxi Morales and paid for it. Even the matchup. And again, the substitutes that they brought in, now, if the Union have all 9 of these guys, maybe they don't make as big of an impact because the Union can now match them with subs off the bench, because a lot of the guys that were playing for the Union weren't regular starters like Colin or Freeze in goal. I mean, but Freeze actually, he held his own out there, played very, very well. But you go from matching 1-for-1 to now you have 3 players that have come in, Magno, who is a high ceiling prospect, and Tajuri Shradi, who has experience, and Thorarison, who has experience. Tajuri Shradi played well, completed the vast majority of his passes, got a couple of free kicks. He upped the tempo when New York City needed it. And Thorarison was the one who took it away from Mabizo. When he was a little tentative, he froze on the switch. And Thorarnison's the one who set up the assist to Thales Magno, who want to win the game. So, at the end of the day, the Union, in spite of being down how many regulars and having to go to their bench for starters and then being really, really thin on the other side of it, paid. For one, really the two mistakes by one player. Mabizo got caught on both goals. And you never pin the loss on one player, but he made both mistakes. And I think it's safe to say that he froze on the last one. It's just like it was like a video game malfunctioning. And then he just didn't track Maxi Morales on the other one. So, there's a little bit of a microscope on him after yesterday for the Philadelphia Union. James Sands, after the match, in true New York fashion, when he was asked how it felt, he responded by saying it was bleeping great. Because let's face it, when you're from New York and New Jersey, like James Sands is, Rye, New York, those are the answers you give to news reporters when they ask you, how does it feel to be going to MLS Cup Final? It's bleeping great. I think that was the best part of the whole day. James Sands. Just not mixing words, just letting it out there. But again, New York City, they played very well, and especially, I would say not very well in the whole game. I'm going to say very well from the point that they inserted Dararnison, Tajuri Shoddy, and Magno. It changed the game. And because the Union were so shorthanded, they couldn't match. That was the turning point of the game. That Ronnie Dyla put in those three players at the same time and said, let's go for it. And Jim Curtin and Pat Noonan looked down their bench and said, we got nothing. We're missing all these regulars, and McGlynn, who we would have probably brought off the bench, and Flock, who we would have probably brought off the bench. And, now we're sitting there going, oh man, you're the Union, you're going, what are we going to do? We got 4 17-year-olds here. Personally, if I had to make a pick on Jim Curtin, because it's clear that if I was going to grade the Union, Colin, I'd give like a 7, 7.5. He played very well. You could say maybe he was, he didn't cut out the cross on the first goal, but Mbaizo was out of position. On both of them, I'd give him like a 2. Because he was doing well, and then it just went downhill very, very quickly. So I'd give him like a 2. McGlynn played pretty well, but for Jim Curtin, he gets a very, very high rating because he took this I don't want to say it's ragtag, but he took his bench and came this close to making it to MLS Cup. The only thing I would knock Jim Curtin on is he didn't trust the guys he put in at the end of the game. And I think that there should have been a move sooner. Jesus Bueno, 15 minutes, did what they needed him to do. And I think that was the point where they also should have put in Anthony Fontana and Paxton Aronson. Because by the time they were down, pulled off Flock and Harriel in stoppage time, it was too late. You're not going to get into the flow of the game when there's 3 minutes left. So, and essentially, where Dyla waits too long, Dyla rolled the dice, and Curtin didn't sit there and go, you know what? These guys have gotten us this far. Let's see what the kids have got. And I think he probably should have. He probably should have used Paxton Aronson and Anthony Fontana a little sooner and inserted a little bit of extra pace in the middle of the park 15 minutes out. Gotten them the fresh legs. Maybe the game changes a little bit. But on the whole, I think, even though they lost, Jim Curtin deserves a high grade because he had him within a couple minutes. They were almost there. 2 defensive gaffes set him back. Maxime Chanot was fantastic for New York City yesterday. If I'm going to give a grade to a New York City player that's very high, I'd put him 7.5 to 8. Played really, really well. I think Maxi Morales, same thing, probably would be in the 7 range. Played very, very well. And as far as man management, the first 50 minutes was not so great for Ronnie Dyla, but they played very, very well, like I said, after they inserted the 3 subs. He put the adjustments in, and now New York City's off to its first MLS Cup final. And it's not at home, but if you're going to grade the subs of New York City, Dararnison's got to be like 7 and 7.5. Tajuri Shradi's got to be in the 7.5, maybe 8 range. And same thing with Thales Magno. He's got to be in that 7 to 8 range. They all did the job. They did the job that they needed them to do. And bravo to Ronnie Dyla for rolling the dice earlier rather than later. And if you ask New York City, some of these players they've talked to from there, they now say, listen, we can beat anybody. And they talked to James Sands, and he said, I remember losing to Columbus. This is about previous years. Losing to Columbus, losing to Toronto, losing to Orlando in these heartbreaking games. Then to finally get over the hurdle means a lot, and it means a lot for everybody, especially the guys who've been on the team a couple of years and have gone through it. They did. They've lost a couple of them, and now they were able to get through it, albeit against the Union team that was missing 11 players, including 6 starters. But you played the game, and the Union still almost beat them. But New York City is off to the MLS Cup final, where they will take on the Portland Timbers, who now, once you get to the end of it, it's a roll of the dice, even though it's in Portland. Now, Portland will be very, very excited. And it's the 7th straight year that either Portland or Seattle have gone to MLS Cup. So Cascadia is pretty darn good. 2014 Galaxy, last time it didn't happen. I pulled it up here in front of me. Timbers, here's Cascadia in MLS Cup. 2015, 2016. I mean, this is impressive. They've been there that many times. The Timbers beat the Crew. The Sounders beat Toronto on penalties. Toronto then beat the Sounders. Atlanta beat the Timbers. Seattle beat Toronto. And the Crew beat Seattle last year. So, it's just talk about dominance. You're basically trading off every other year. The Timbers and the Sounders. Probably the 2 best supported teams in the West, if not in the whole league. And then looking at the final, very briefly here as we come towards the end of the program. Actually, you know what? Let's take another pause for the cause, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap up with the MLS Cup final.
Experts say that the most important time in a young child's life is elementary school, and the lessons they learn from kindergarten through 8th grade form the foundation for the rest of their lives. That's where Mother of Mercy Academy excels. For over 70 years, Mother of Mercy has provided a faith-based Catholic education to children in the South Hills. They offer an advanced curriculum, active arts, and full sports program with a Christ-centered experience. Mother of Mercy focuses on molding young minds intellectually, physically, and spiritually. Their goal is for children to become well-rounded individuals who are prepared for the next steps in life. Mother of Mercy Academy is located at the St. Gabriel campus, 5200 Greenridge Drive in the Baldwin section of Pittsburgh. They currently have an open enrollment period and can be reached at 412-882-3353. That's 412-882-3353. Mother of Mercy Academy, for faith, for family, for life.
Are you looking for a job that can turn into a career? If so, why don't you hit the road with Waste Management? Waste Management is hiring experienced and entry-level CDL truck drivers and technicians. If you're at least 18 years of age, come join our growing team and get up to a $7,000 sign-on bonus based on experience. WM offers competitive pay and industry-leading benefits, including tuition reimbursement for yourself and dependents. Start your tomorrow today. Visit WM online at careers.wm.com. The Polish Falcons of America's new term life insurance plan is the perfect choice for young individuals and families looking to plan for tomorrow today. PFA Term Life can provide a substantial lump sum benefit in the event of a tragic loss, helping loved ones pay off a mortgage, credit cards, student loans, and cover funeral expenses. Learn more by calling 1-800-535-2071. That's 1-800-535-2071 or visiting PolishFalcons.org. Carnegie Ironworks is Pittsburgh's go-to for artistic, unique, and decorative steel and iron designs. We provide custom fencing, interior and exterior railings, outdoor fire pits, window coverings, and much more. If you can think of it, we can fabricate it. Find us on the web at www.carnegieiron.com. That's Carnegie Ironworks, for when you need it for 500 years. Are you an athlete looking to take your game and performance to the next level? Gym Rat Performance Training is where Pittsburgh's elite competitors go to train. We specialize in personal training, strength, speed, and agility training, sports-specific training, and we offer the best basketball player development in the City of Champions. If you are ready to transform your body, expand your mind, and reach your potential, it's time to join the Rat Pack at gymratpt.com. That's GYMRATPT.com. Gym Rat Performance Training, punishing Pittsburgh since 2016 because rats don't rest.
Back here on Three Rivers Broadcasting, Alex Fidrushevsky with you. It's the Corner Kick. Make sure you join us for the Three Rivers Broadcasting Sports Report Wednesday at 8 o'clock. I know it says 7 on our little square here where we've upped it to 8 o'clock, so you could join us Wednesday at 8 o'clock. We'll have to change that for next week. So, again, you could join us at 8 o'clock for Three Rivers Broadcasting Sports Report, Coach Krzyzewski and myself. In the last couple of minutes of the program, we've got about 8 minutes to go here. I want to just take a look at some players to watch as we go into MLS Cup Final. And against the Timbers, it's their third appearance in the final in the last, 6 years? So New York City making its first since coming into the league just about 6 years ago. I think one of the players to watch for this weekend will be the play of Sebastian Blanco. He had a couple of days rest, pulled his hamstring against the Rapids, didn't play last weekend against Salt Lake. And with the Timbers were up, and they didn't have to worry. There was no point in Savarese inserting him into the match. The question is, I think, is he going to be good to go for Saturday afternoon? If he can start, can you get 60? Can you get 60 out of him coming off a little knock? If he can't, then Felipe Mora has to really shoulder the load once again. Mora led the team in scoring in the regular season. He had 11 goals. And after he scored, it kind of set the tone. Portland should also get, will, I shouldn't say should. He got red carded against the Rapids. They'll get Dairon Asprilla back out wide. He took a foolish card late in the match. We're talking stoppage time level foolishness. But again, he had 10 goals in the regular season as well. So he was, the two best players hopefully should be available for the Portland Timbers. The Timbers come into this game. There's quite a bit of experience on that team. Players who have done it both here and abroad. They're not the youngest bunch. Mabiala's 34. Valeri's 35. Sebastian Blanco's 33. Diego Chara's 35. So there's some serious mileage on the legs. Steve Clark in net, 35. But a lot of big game experience. Clark got the job done in Norway, got the job done with the Columbus Crew, and now has played very well with Portland Timbers. Chara has been around the block with the Timbers since day one, and he's one of those like build the statue outside the ground type guys. Like he's one of those guys you consider, building a statue outside the stadium too when he's done, as they do in Europe. He's worthy of it, or having some type of something in Providence Park for him. So does Diego Valeri, who's been with them for quite some time as well. Chara, obviously, again, having been with them since day one, has got 2 years on him, but both of those guys have been irreplaceable parts. I think that it's a toss of the coin right now. I like this Timbers team who turned it on late, but can their experience carry them all the way across the line and doing it at home? I think having Asprilla and back is a boost, and the rest of this counts on can Blanco play. If Blanco can give him 60, then you should be in a pretty decent spot. Both teams actually have some similar things happen. Tinnerholm, who's probably one of the best outside backs in the league, ruptures his Achilles in October. Keaton Parks out for the season due to a blood clot. Portland lost Andy Polo on a nasty tackle back in May. And then Eric Williamson, who is starting to mix his way into the U.S. national team and was probably positioning himself to, maybe get a transfer overseas. He does his ACL in August. So there's, they've both lost some key pieces to the puzzle here, but they've still managed to make it to the final day. Players to watch for New York City. I mean, Castellanos will be back because of that second yellow card against New England. I mean, that was his own fault. He knew it too. And he went into that challenge. He's like, "Oh no, don't do it!" And yeah, it was coming. And then Sean Johnson could be another guy who's gonna have to play a big role for them. Matchup of the day, it's in the middle of the park for me. Maxi Morales and Diego Chara. These are two cagey veterans, if you want to use like a boxing term. They're cagey veterans. And Chara was able to shut down Rusnak. And if he does it to Morales, Portland's going to win. If Morales can find some room to operate, then New York City's going to have a real shot. I think Mabiala will also have to play at an elite level, and at 34, I think against Castellanos, his pace, and then potentially Talas Magno in there as well. The pace could be a problem, so he's going to have to kind of channel everything he learned in France at PSG and Nice and in the 2 stops he made in Turkey prior to coming to Portland, and as well as his few runouts with the national team for Congo when he was younger, to stop him. So I think personally, if I had to make a pick, that New York City is going to claim their first one. They'll do it in Portland. I think New York City's going to be a touch more dangerous going forward with Castellanos back. And then they'll still have Hebert and Talas Magno and Tajuri Shradi as options coming off the bench. I mean, to have 4 of them now is, that's a lot. I think that New York's going to have just a little bit too much for them. And I think a little bit younger legs could also make the difference, though. At home, you can't count Portland out, but for me, with Castellanos could be the difference maker. I think that Castellanos' return could be the difference maker, and if Dyla can manage like he did in Philadelphia to kind of survive the first, you got to survive in increments. They got to survive because it's in Portland. They got to get through the first 15 minutes because it's going to be loud And I know it's a cliche, emotional, this and that. Portland's going to come out emotionally high, and they're going to press, and they're going to pressure, and they're going to try to create turnovers, and take the ball away and go at New York City and kind of transition on them and get a counterattack moving. So for New York City, they have to weather the first 15 minutes of the half, settle in, weather the last 7 or 8 minutes of the first half, and then they're going to have to do it again. You got to get through the first 10 minutes of the second half, and then the end of the 90. If he can manage them through the first portion of the game and get into that lull, you ride through that, maybe, hope that you could pick one off somewhere before halftime, and then you adjust accordingly in the second half. It's going to be a great game on Saturday. Should be. I mean, it's MLS Cup. Hopefully it'll be a well-played final. These aren't first-place teams doing it, but when you have a playoff system, this is what happens. And I'm not a fan of playoffs. I think you win, you go home. And if we're going to have a playoff, maybe you take the top team from each conference. You have the final, and that's it. But the playoffs are a money grab, and I get it, and they're going to do it, and they're going to take more teams. And when they go to, 35, 36 teams, 18 teams will be making the playoffs, and it'll be absolutely wonderful to see the first-place team lose to the 17th place team when they do nothing but sit behind the ball for 90 minutes. Yeah, it'll be great. But again, the playoffs will continue to expand. I also very quickly, because we're in stoppage time now. We're at 1 hour. But I want to put out there a very, very funny one. Gianni Infantino's really hit my crap list over the course of the last few months with this. Every other year, the biennial World Cup. Oh, we should do yes, every other year, because the billionaires that own the TV networks and the sponsorship people they're the ones telling us to drive this every other year, not because we actually believe it's good for the game. His crap line yesterday was, "It's not a World Cup, it's a cup of the best teams." No, you think, Gianni, the idea that the best teams from each region compete in the World Cup? No, let's go every other year. And they've batted around some moronic idea about, we'll limit World Cup participation so it's more inclusive a tournament for all. Okay, great. So what does the World Cup mean in the off year when Brazil can't play, Italy can't play, Germany can't play, the US, Mexico, and Canada can't play, England's not playing, France isn't playing, Japan and Australia can't play, neither can Nigeria or Tunisia or Saudi Arabia. Who else is not allowed? New Zealand, because they made that World Cup with their mediocre team, can't play the next one. I'm really looking forward to a group stage match in the World Cup with 64 teams that they'll probably go to next, because 48's not going to be enough in the off year when let's see, first round match will be Paraguay against Vanuatu. Really looking forward to Paraguay against Vanuatu representing Oceania. Or that riveting contest between Guatemala and Moldova in the off-year World Cup, which means it's truly a World Cup. Gianni Infantino has turned out to be nothing more than a major league asshole. And that's where I'm going to leave the show. And we'll talk about it more next week. God bless. Have a great night from all of us here at Three Rivers Broadcasting.